Welcome to the Undercovers podcast. I'm Ben along with Paul. Connor is out for the night, which is a little disappointing because of the
I know.
breaking news that happened today. I wanted to hear his reaction from our resident Yinzer, but we'll get right into the show tonight. Speaking of that, our first quick take is just related to that topic, which was supposed to be for Connor, but he's doing a tour. So, Paul, take it away with our first quick take of the night.
So the first quick take is literally just reacting to the George Pickens trade, and I mean, eh, Connor has been on this since the beginning of the rumors, like I don't know, months ago, and he's been mocking every trade known to mankind to get Pickens out of Pittsburgh, and he was talking to me last night about George Pickens is that he kind of felt like at this point after the draft, he felt like George Pickens was probably going to stay in Pittsburgh because one he actually didn't ask to be traded. And then this morning and early last night we started to hear the rumblings of a trade, and then he gets traded early this morning. And it's interesting to me because with this trade is how the Steelers wide receiver room is kind of set up, because you could say George Pickens was the best receiver in that room, and now they kind of lose like their wide receiver one, and they're kind of wide receiver by committee right now, kind of similar to like the Bills offense in some way.
Well, they just got DK Metcalf, in case you already
Right, that
forgot
is true.
that. So, I mean, he should be the de facto wide receiver one. I mean, he
Right.
possibly could have been the wide receiver one, um, even with Pickens. But, I definitely have some reservations of this. Yes, you know, he's in a contract year. Maybe he didn't
Mhm.
ask out. It did sound like the Steelers wanted to get rid of him, from all reports. But to me, like, it's just like the same issue they had last year, other than they have DK Metcalf under contract past this year. So, yeah, that helps. But who's their wide receiver too? I mean, Calvin Austin has shown some flashes,
Mhm.
maybe not sustainable enough to be a go-to number two. I mean, I'm sure they'd
Mhm.
love to see what they got out of Roman Wilson, a guy that a lot of us Bills fans were high on last year, but for whatever reason, injuries and whatnot, couldn't get on the field. He really was a no-show last year. I mean, I'm not going to write him off after just 1 year in the league, but to me,
Mhm.
I think it would have been interesting to see what they could have had with Pickens and Metcalf together, but now it's just like uh, Metcalf and a bunch of guys. I mean, they still don't have their quarterback. As you saw, I mean, they could go after another
Mhm.
name released today, which I guess will spoil it because I did want to touch it later with the Bills news. But Gabe
Mhm.
Davis, apparently the Steelers have had some interest in him when he was a free agent last season, and or last year before the season, and now he is a free agent. And I mean, they definitely need bodies in that room. I
Right.
mean, Lazard's also rumored to be traded there, especially if the Rodgers rumors ever come to fruition.
Mhm.
So it is interesting because it definitely does not make Pittsburgh as appealing of a spot for Rodgers or whoever else if their receiver room stays as constructed. But yeah, I mean, I kind of it was interesting. I mean, I think they should have done it during the draft, so they could have used the pick they got to shore up the position. Yes, can never count on a rookie to replace a guy like Pickens, but I thought Pittsburgh lost a trade if I was to grade it. I think Dallas is an interesting
Mhm.
fit, especially because they're already paying CD and they do have to pay Parsons. So are they just going to have Pickens as a rental? But even if it's not a bad option. They needed help in the receiver room desperately because outside of Lamb, who else do they have in their
True.
wide receiver room? I mean, they traded for Jonathan Mingo last year, and it's crazy. They basically almost gave up what they got for George Pickens for what they got Mingo for. And I know Mingo has a
Mhm.
lot more control because I think he still has 2 more years left on his rookie deal versus Pickens. this is last year of his rookie contract. So when they traded for Mingo, he had a lot more control. But just think, going off the two players side by side, I would definitely think Pickens would be a lot more than Mingo.
Yeah, Pickens definitely probably would cost a little bit more because, production wise, he's been a really, he's been a consistent player that's been getting snaps and been contributing to the Pittsburgh offense for the last little while. And you look at you look at the Cowboys room with CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens. That's a decent room, and it really comes down to if with Dallas, if they want to keep Pickens, is how much they want to pay Micah Parsons. And I don't know what Jerry Jones is thinking, because I guess Micah Parsons and George Pickens both have the same agent, and I guess that was the agent Jerry Jones never heard of until he finally spoke to Micah Parsons' agent just before this draft. So that's going to be an interesting debate in Dallas. Is, how are they going to sign George Pickens and Micah Parsons when they both have the same agent, and just doesn't seem like Jerry Jones is willing to budge on either one of them as of right now. But I feel like Pittsburgh probably did lose this trade, even though they gain a third round pick for next year. I kind of like it, maybe from the perspective if they're going to try to trade up for a quarterback next year. I mean, Drew Aller is probably coming out next. Drew Aller is probably the top quarterback in the class next year. Maybe they try to bundle up a couple of their picks to go up and go get their quarterback of the future in Pittsburgh. So maybe that's the idea of this George Pickens trade: is we're going to set up ourselves now so we can go get our quarterback of the future next year.
Yeah, let's move into our next quick take because that one, nothing wrong with it. It was an interesting topic. We spent a little bit longer than we usually do. But next, my winners and losers of the NFL draft, and I guess I'll keep it consistent. I think for that reason, they need a quarterback. And what did they really do to fix the position? I think Pittsburgh, I do like the Harmon pick, Johnson, whatever. They need a running back round 3. But I mean, Will Howard was fine for round 6 for where they got him, but I mean, I think Pittsburgh should have been the team to go after Milroe because they desperately need a quarterback badly, and I just think I'm looking at the Pittsburgh Steelers. Not the biggest fan of. I mean, I like Harmon, but I just think for what they needed, quarterback was not really addressed early enough for me, and keeping it in the division, I'll go out another loser. I think the Cincinnati Bengals, like, they just had a very meh draft to me. I think Shamar Stewart was drafted a little high. They didn't really address the offensive line enough, other than I think a 3rd round pick. And as far as I guess, since I already gave out a couple winners, I don't want to do all losers. But I mean, I hate to give credit to a division rival, but I think that the Patriots really knocked the draft out of the ballpark, getting Will Campbell, franchise left tackle, Travion Henderson, and Kyle Williams, a guy a lot of us liked. They got some good late value too between Joshua Farmer, Braden Swinson, guys who some people picked to go in round 3. So I mean, they got those guys late. So I did like what New England did. I also think Arizona had a very strong draft, adding Walter Nolan, to add some interior pressure, a guy to go next to Calais Campbell, and as well as where they got Will Johnson. Like, that was just fantastic value. I mean, he was a top 10 prospect for much of the draft process. Sorry, and the fact that they got him so late, I think, was really good value. The Bears, they're like a neutral because from a fantasy football perspective, like, man, their offense could be awesome, but
Right.
I would have liked to see them get a running back early, and maybe that's why they took Burden. It was almost like a panic pick but I do like the possibility of Burden to go with DJ Moore and Romo Dunze, and even their 1st round pick, which I did like, Colson Loveland. I know they did take him over Tyler Warren, but I still like the fit. Getting another weapon. Yes, I know they already have a almost called him Dalton Komet. Sorry. Uh, is it Cole Komet?
It's Cole Kmet, yeah.
Sorry, I was just thinking Dalton Kincaid because the Bills kind of did the same thing. They already had a Dawson Knox,
Mhm.
and they drafted a receiver
Yeah.
type and Kincaid, and what the Bears
Loveland
got
and
in Loveland.
Kmet.
So I mean, Loveland
Mhm.
Komet should be fun, but then
Mhm.
they got Ozzie Trapillo to help that offensive line, which they did a lot of work on in free agency and trade. So I was a big fan of what the Bears did. Maybe the running back would be my only knock on them.
Mhm.
Dallas as well. I thought, you know, Donovan Azuruke and Tyler Booker were very solid picks to build the trenches up. Still think they could have got a running back earlier, but I mean, Jaden Blue and Maffa are decent values from
Mhm.
where they got them. Um, And the Jags had a fun draft. I think they gave up a little bit much for Hunter, and who knows how much he can play on both sides of the NFL. But if
Right.
they play him mostly at receiver, which seems like the plan, especially since they got rid of Gabe Davis today, but they also added Bysal Tootin, the fastest running back in the class. So, I mean, the Jags offense at least should be fun. I mean, the defense still has concerns in the defensive backfield. I did like what the Falcons did as well. They desperately needed defensive help, and they got two of the better edge rushers in the draft in the first round. And they also were able to get Xavier Watts. So those probably were my winners and losers. And let's get into our Bills talk.
Yeah, Bills also had a relatively good draft. A lot of mixed emotions on the Bills draft, and let's start off with the Bills draft here. What grade do you think the Bills draft deserves?
Mm, I don't want to be overly biased. But actually, this was one of my favorite drafts the Bills have had in quite some time, at least at the time of the draft, because I feel like I liked last year's draft. At least the beginning, there were some picks I kind of questioned. I mean, yes, certainly fans did question some of the picks this year, like Lunt and maybe the Jackson Haws pick. But I
Mhm.
mean, if you look at my mock drafts, I did mock an offensive lineman and tight end in almost all of my mock drafts. So like it was kind of consistent with what I thought the Bills needed and what they could pick. I mean, yes, they could have maybe gone receiver early, but I just think if you look how the board played out, Tesla went earlier than I think a lot of people
Yeah.
projected when the Lions traded up from him in the third round. Dante Thornton went in the fourth round right after they got. Was that before the Deion Walker pick or right after? I don't remember off the top of my head, but
Think it was after.
I know that was a guy the Bills had targeted. So those guys went semi early. They Royals was the one guy they maybe could have gotten, which I guess we'll see what
Mm.
he is. I mean, I like Jalen Royals, so I don't want to be a hypocrite. Now that he's on the Chiefs, Horton went a couple picks before their pick, so I mean they could have gotten Horton. Other than that, like I feel like those were really the receivers they targeted, and maybe Bond, but Bond still has to resolve whatever legal issues he's facing. And you know
Right.
what?
Deontay
The
Thornton
Bills.
went the pick above
Okay,
Walker.
so it's possible the Bills could have were targeting Thornton and he got snagged from them, but it is still possible to come away with Isaiah Bond. And if you were to, say yes, he's an undrafted free agent, but if they still can add Bond somehow, and you add him to the current class, I think everyone would have given this draft class an A+. But
Yeah.
as it's constructed, I would probably give it a B+ to A
Yeah.
minus. It wasn't a sexy draft. It wasn't flashy. You know, the
Yeah.
Bills kind of checked all their needs and then some. A lot of fans said look for a double dip at D tackle and corner, which did happen. Landon Jackson, who just seemed such a Bills type prospect through the entire
Mhm.
draft process. Then the fact that the Bills either defensive line coach or assistant defensive line coach had to work out with him in Arkansas. Like it was just a very predictable Bills pick, and I love where they got him because I even said draft day that the Bills were taking him round one, which was a little bit of a hot. maybe overly of a hot take, but I wouldn't have been shocked, to be honest with you, just because of how the Bills draft, and he
Mhm.
has such a big ceiling. But I think with the fact they got him, that might be the best pick of the draft, and it does depend how he pans out. But I am excited about him. He has some Max Crosby like intangibles. He still has to put
Yeah.
it together, but I think him next to Rousseau can be a potential scary pass rush duo if both of them can hit their ceilings.
Yeah, speaking about Landon Jackson here, just found this tweet on Landon Jackson and Greg Rousseau. Greg Rousseau 6'6", Landon Jackson 6'7", 264 to 266. And so like if you look at their 40 splits, 458 to 468, and a 165 to 158 10 split. So I mean both players have the ceiling of being a really good edge rusher for the Bills, and especially if you want to put, Greg Rousseau on one side and you have Landon Jackson at the other side. I mean, that could be a killer 1-2 punch. And then right in the middle of your defense is TJ Sanders and Dean Walker. So I mean, that could be a really elite defensive line, maybe in about let's say in about 2-3 years when these guys start fully getting full snaps and fully developing. You know, where I kind of start looking at the Bills draft is their first four picks, and I said this last night, and I'm going to say it again. And I've been saying this a couple of times throughout the our draft process here. Is the Bills really needed to hit on their first four picks, and I feel like the Bills hit on all of their first four picks, and it's not really a draft where in past drafts you really can't say like the Bills really hit on their first few picks. This draft, you can say that because I feel like each one of these players has the upside of being really, really good on the Bills defensive line. And you get a guy like, Maxwell Harrison to go be cornerback two to Christian Benford. So I mean, the Bills really solidified their defense for now and for the foreseeable future. And
Agreed.
where I grade the Bills draft, I kind of in your range, but I'm going to give it a solid B. I feel
Okay.
like it's a
So a little bit
very
lower, but still respectable. Yep.
yeah. I give it a B. Just if it's a very Brandon Bean Buffalo Bills type draft, it flows really well. Just the first four picks to me carry this draft rather than I think the bottom few picks, kind of confused me. Like, drafting a tight end 3 over receiver and picking,
Well, I think it
no,
was how the board worked out.
right.
That's why. I mean, the Bills did need a tight end 3, though. We talked about it with Dean coming on the
Hmm.
show. Like, I mean, yes, I know a lot of people love the idea of Davidson, but Davidson really hasn't made it shake in the NFL yet. So unless he really surprises and has a great camp, I mean, I think he's more of a practice squad guy.
Yeah. I feel like the Haas pick is probably was to uh I feel like the Haas pick it feels like if you look at I believe how the board went in that draft, is that think the 49ers a few picks afterwards went blocking tight end, and that's where the Bills probably thought threatened is that if they didn't pick the tight end 3 there, they would have missed out on a really good replacement for Quentin Morris and to solidify their back end of their tight end room. But other than that, I feel like the Bills hit on most of their picks. I don't mind the cornerback depth. I like the versatility in a guy like a Jordan Hancock who could play regular corner. He could flip to a nickel corner, or even he can go out and play deep as a safety. So I really feel like that is a really good pick at right at in the fifth round for the Buffalo Bills. And another guy that's been getting some high praises, and especially from being in the Bills embedded yesterday, he said that if Maxwell Harrison wasn't available at 30, and say like it wasn't available at 30, TJ Sanders was in contention for pick number 30. So
Wow.
do you think the Bills did Do you think the Bills reached on TJ Sanders, or do you think he was valued at a spot?
Well, if the Bills had him high on that high on their board, and they definitely felt convicted to trade up, which seemed past the Jets, a team that definitely could have used that position. If that's for the Bill, look, I can only give my predictions based on what I watched and read, and I mean, guys had him ranked differently,
Mm-hmm.
based on what draft site you were on or whatnot. I mean, I would have preferred Collins, but they did shore up the one tech and Walker. If they feel like Sanders is their guy, I'm always of the philosophy to go up and get your guy. So I don't feel like it was a reach if Brandon Bean thought so highly of him and had him up on
Mm-hmm.
their board. It really just matters what the Bills thought of him, how he performs, and if he performs, then I think it's a great pick. I mean, it's the same with any pick though. Like fans are having PTSD with Kyer Elam already on Max Harrison, and they're like, well, what if Strong ends up being the next Christian Benford and Harrison Elam? I'm like, well, first of all, Harrison is a much better scheme fit than Elam ever was, and he is
Mm-hmm.
also more athletic. Yes, Elam is longer and has more size, but he pretty much relied on just jamming guys at the line and relying on his size and physicality to beat guys in college. Whereas if you look at Harrison, he relies a lot on his instincts and footwork, and you can make an argument he was one of the best zone corners in the entire class. Maybe just behind Hunter and Barron. I know a lot of Bills fans loved Amos, and
Mm-hmm.
yes, I would have liked Amos, but he didn't get picked until pick 60. So it's not like the Bills passed on Amos and he went right to the Chiefs. I mean, they almost had a chance to get him at pick 60. I mean, they could have got him where they got Sanders, but I mean, obviously you weren't going to go corners first two picks. They did find good value and Strong later in the draft, but I don't feel that the Sanders pick was a reach.
Mm-hmm. I don't think it was a reach either. I feel like if, like kind of you said, if the Bills feel like that was a pick that were really high on, and it seemed like they really were high on TJ Sanders. If Harrison wasn't available at 30, he was in contention for pick 30. And I was looking some stats on TJ Sanders before the show, and I walked around. I saw this tweet from Brady Ballhorn, and he has about a three. He said on his database of among defensive linemen, he had 388 defensive linemen, and T.J. Sanders was one of four defensive linemen with a 12% pass uh, pr- pressure rate with a sub 540. So I mean the question with T.J. Sanders is could he be a reliable pass rusher, and just based off that, he's one of four defensive linemen with that 12% pressure rate, with a sub 540. I say that J.J. Sanders could turn into somebody like that, where he could be an elite pass rusher and a really, really solid run defender. And I feel like that's what the Bills really did with T.J. Sanders, is that they're betting on his upside in the pass rush, and then they're really just going to bank on him being a run defender. And you look at the Bills season this year, they're going to have to be facing a lot of run heavy teams, guys like Saquon Barkley and Derrick Henry. So the Bills grabbing run defenders in this draft is not a bad idea at all.
All right, now on to the player outside of the top picks with the most upside. I feel like this one is kind of a layup, but I'll still take it because I had mocked him in the second round, and at one point, if you look at early mock drafts of this year from right after last draft, some people even had him as the top 10 pick. Now, kind of similar to another big toolsy player on the Bills and Spencer Brown, a back injury did derail a season last year, so I don't think we saw the true form of Deion Walker, but I like where they got Deion Walker at that spot, and if he can just get healthy and work on it, fixing his pad level, I mean they could have gotten a steal at pick 109. So that's my answer for the player with the most upside. It's Deion Walker.
Yeah, that was the guy that I literally was going to go the same way as well. I feel like that was the easiest answer, and I feel like if you really look at Dean Walker, 73 QB pressures since 2023. That's what's second among defensive tackles in this draft. So the upside of Dean Walker is amazing, and I feel like by year 2 or 3 we could start seeing the full potential of what Walker could be. And I'm excited for a guy like a Dean Walker, a guy like Dorian Strong. I feel like he with some development, Dorian Strong could be a really useful guy in the Bills in the Bills cornerback system. He's a lot of people's favorites at the cornerback position in this draft. He's 6 foot. He's 185.
Good
He
zone
ran a four
corner.
four. Yeah, huh?
I said good zone corner.
Yeah, he's a really good zone corner. He's a guy that the Bills I feel like the Bills really would like, and could be in the rotation with Maxwell Harrison in the future. And then if push comes to shove, it turns out to be that Harrison and Strong could possibly be Harrison Strong and Hancock are your new three corners if push comes to shove. If the Bills feel like they need to move it in a direction after Christian Benford, but that's nowhere near or there. It's just a lot of security blankets for the Bills moving forward. I feel like that's what this draft was a lot about. It was securing the future of the defense, and I feel like Bean really hit on a lot of those picks.
Yeah. Speaking of the draft, I know a lot of people were upset with the lack of receiver, but Bean did address it right away. You can make an argument that the player they brought in, Elijah Moore, I didn't mean to make this a pun, but he has more upside than anyone they would have gotten late day 3, potentially day 2. So he's still only 25, has a great route tree, can play inside and outside, 4.3 speed, has never played with a quarterback even close to Josh Allen's uh, caliber. So I'm excited actually with this Elijah Moore pickup. He's a player I've kind of liked for a few years. We also have Gabe Davis available too. I mean, I guess if you want to touch on that, that's like a really hot topic,
Yeah.
with Bills fans, very polarizing. I think a lot of us are on my side of the spectrum, whereas don't break Davis back. I mean, I will hear the others' arguments. Well, he could be a blocker, put him on special teams, whatever. But the Bills just don't keep 6 receivers. And which of the 5 receivers are you going to cut? I would rather see what we roll with more, a healthy
Hmm.
Samuel, see what we have in those guys. I mean, if possible, Davis may still go unsigned. I mean, I don't anticipate it, but he may not. Even if he signs with a team like New England or Pittsburgh, maybe he's a camp cut. I mean, if the Bills are really desperate for a receiver, then maybe midseason, if he's still available, which he may not be, then sign him. But if not, I mean, I'm rolling with what I have in this receiver room. I like the upside of some of the guys.
Hmm.
And I think for the best role for Elijah Moore is, I think, just to kind of play the Amari Cooper role last year, maybe have him and Palmer split with that. But I actually I'm I'm more excited for Elijah Moore than Curtis Samuel, even though I still want to see what a healthy Samuel brings to the offense. But I just like the possibility of having guys who are separators, guys who could play on the outside. They bring speed and yak to the offense, good route tree. So that's why my ideal receiver room looks like Shakir, Coleman, Palmer, Samuel, and
Hmm.
more. I don't know what your
Yeah.
thoughts are on that.
So I'm gonna more first, and I'll go into talking a little bit about Gabe Davis. You go back to 2 years ago, more out of ranked top five out in separation. He had an 80 according to Next Gen Stats. He had an 82 separation score. That was top five among receivers. That include AJ Brown, Garrett Wilson, Tank Dell, Keenan Allen, and Brandon Ayuk. So even playing with quarterbacks like Joe Flacco, Zach Wilson, etc., Elijah Moore has been able to separate and he's been able to provide production to the receiver room. And I feel
Mm-hmm.
like that's what the Bills need to the room. And I feel like it could turn into a more like a Amari Cooper type role, like you mentioned, and really just be that one guy that continuously provides separation to the Bills room, and that can open up the middle of the field a lot for guys like Dalton Kincaid, guys like Khalil Shakir. I mean, sometimes you could probably throw Curtis Samuel over the middle once in a while because if he's healthy and he's going to be a slot receiver for the Bills. So get Samuel the ball more often because got a lot of the cornerbacks of opposing teams will be eyeing the separator of Elijah Moore. And out for
Mm-hmm.
Gabe Davis, this is an interesting one because the Bills do have two guys that are going to be suspended through the first 6 weeks of the season, and they're going
Yep.
to have two. They're going to have two extra spots available to use. So if there was a year to keep 6 receivers for the first 6 weeks of the season, this might be the year where the Bills, for the first quarter of the season, will keep 6 receivers. And if push comes to shove, Gabe Davis isn't doing what we expected him to do, he could be a midseason cut. And guys like Larry Ojinobi and Michael Hoyt both come to the roster.
My only pushback is even without Gabe Davis or those guys suspended, um, they're gonna be tight with the defensive linemen that they're gonna keep. Now they could keep Daquan Jones, but are you gonna trust a fourth round pick rookie to be your day one starting nose tech? Obviously, you're gonna
Right.
keep Oliver, Carter, and unless they IR Walker, which I don't see them doing. So you're gonna keep those four guys plus Sanders. That's 5 D tackles. Then you go to your edge room. You obviously have. I think they would like to keep Solomon. I don't see them cutting Solomon, especially after he made the team last year. So you have Javon Solomon, you have Rousseau, you got Bosa, you got who else am I missing? Um shoot, edges. Help me out.
Solomon.
I got Solomon, Rousseau, Bosa. Oh, Landon Jackson.
Yeah, Landon Jackson.
Landon Jackson. And then
So Bosa, Landon
and I guess Epinesa.
Jackson.
So I mean I guess you
Yeah,
could
Epinesa. Yeah,
just
yeah.
get away with just I think that's it for the D lineman. I mean, I guess you could maybe get away with 10 D linemen, but you weren't keeping 12 D linemen to begin with. So the spots, they're going to have to do some roster finagling anyways in order to
Hmm.
open up spots, even if they do decide to keep Ogunjobi and what they do decide to do with Hoyt. But I mean, this is just my opinion. I mean, just
Hmm.
looking at how it's constructed, I just don't see a open spot for Davis. And I mean, I think you drafted a tight end, so you'll keep 3 tight ends um plus Reggie Gilliam. So I don't know. I just don't see
Could
it
you
really.
see maybe Gabe Davis being like a camp body? Could see if he could earn a
Maybe, but I
spot.
think
Like,
I
the Bills
think
always love extra competition.
yeah, but I see him probably going to a team where he has a better chance to make the roster, even the Giants or the
Hmm.
Jets,
Yeah, the
who
Giants
don't
could be.
have so many receivers on the roster. So I don't know. I don't see it. Um, the Bills being the best fit, other than he used to play for the Bills. Um, but let's move on because there's a lot of discourse going around about Dalton Kincaid, and you know how I feel about him. And I don't think it's necessarily. I think the durability is part of it. I think it's just the fact that he's not super athletic and he's not a great blocker. So you pretty much have to only play him on passing downs. But the problem is he's the type of player where you're going to dictate your tendencies to your opponents. So when he's in, teams are going to know you're passing, and when you have Hawes out there, they probably know you're going to be running. And I think Hawes has a real shot with his blocking prowess to take the field on early downs from Dalton Kincaid, even early in the season. They drafted him for a reason. He's an elite blocker. I mean, obviously Kincaid, the stories are written on him, but he is going to definitely have to come into camp and definitely show that he's improved as a blocker. And even, I think his hands were questionable last year, and he's supposed to be so sure-handed coming out of Utah. That's the two things I need to see from Kincaid is that he's cleaned up those drops, and that also his blocking skills have improved.
I'm a little concerned on Dalton Kincaid. I feel like
Really?
his upside. He still has the upside to me. I feel like if he gets a few things right, I feel like he could be a really elite tight end for the Bills. But when I'm looking at Dalton Kincaid, he has, especially go back to the. Did you see the latest picture of Dalton Kincaid at OTAs from the Thigh Doc?
I did. I was the one who sent that actually to our group chat, I
So
thought.
that's the one. So that's the picture where kind of looking and being concerned about is his durability because he looks skinnier than normal than he did last year, and he has two knee braces on. Both he has a knee sleeve on his far knee and his close knee, I believe, is the knee that he injured last year, and he still has a brace on from his surgery. So and the Bills also asked him to get heavier so he can, start maybe to learn how to block more often and use his body to create separation. And if that's the body he's going to roll into to, mandatory mini camps in a few weeks and then in about 2 months roll into training camp with that body, it's concerning. He's small. And if you're small at the tight end position, linebackers are just going to just lay you to the ground easily. And that's where injuries start to happen. And that's where you start to getting caught up on blocks and you can't get open. And that where his athleticism really doesn't come into play because he's getting locked up all the time. And there's the issue is that he needs to start to get healthy, and that durability concern is starting to concern me heading into year 3 because he was healthy year 1 and he showed what he could do in the Bills offense as a rookie tight end. Year 2 he got hurt, his hands started he didn't have those for sure hands, and he was a little light last year and couldn't get open. What is year 3 going to look like for Dalton Kincaid? Could he still add weight before training camp and be heavier than he was last year? Sure, but how would that translate into game game action is still to be determined, and he needs to stay healthy in order to be his full self, and that's kind of concerning because he's really, outside of maybe Dawson Knox, he's really the most productive tight end right now on the Bills roster.
100%. Lastly, as we wrap up, will the Bills get a holiday game this year? And I'm going to say yes. We've already kind of got some rumors that they're going to be playing at home on Christmas, so I'll buy into the hype. I know a lot of Bills fans kind of with similar to how we had PTSD with the Max Harrison pick from Kyer Elam. They also have PTSD about holiday games because the last two holiday games have ended brutally with them losing Trey White and Von Miller. But let's have a holiday game like that Dallas game where we kicked butt and didn't have any injuries on national TV. And this time
Yeah.
we'll actually finally be able to play at home. So I would be for that. I don't know if it would be against the Chiefs. I think they like giving Chiefs. I mean, they did play in Pittsburgh last year, but I don't think they'd put them on the road 2 years in a row on Christmas. But maybe it's Cincinnati or Philly or one of those teams. I mean, that could be a very fun matchup, and some people even have hinted it could be the final regular season home game at the current Highmark Stadium. So
Hmm.
I'll buy the rumor that we get a holiday game.
I kind of find I would rather have a holiday home game. It's been a while since the Bills actually had a holiday road game, home game. They played Thanksgiving a few years ago against Detroit, and then they played the Saints on Thanksgiving prime time on the road at the Superdome, and then a few years before that they played Dallas on Thanksgiving on the road. So I feel like if you're the Bills are going to get a home holiday game, that Christmas is probably going to be that game. And we all know that the Bills get the Chiefs at home this year, and that the Chiefs said they want to play on Christmas regularly. So that's kind of like the first one that kind of sticks out to me just a little bit. I believe the Bills also have the Saints at home. So could they just do another Bills Saints on prime time on Thanksgiving? That could be an option for the Bills. But I feel like the Bills would get a Christmas night game, and they could possibly be like Bills maybe Bills Pats, on Christmas night, you know, Drake May versus Josh Allen. I feel like that would, with the new roster in New England, that would be a profitable game for the NFL to look at. It's Josh Allen versus Drake May. Who knows what the Patriots look like? Maybe they're contending, trying to sneak in the back way of the wild card, and the Bills could also be clinching the division that night. So that could have some serious implications on a Christmas night. And I feel like that would be something that the NFL would be interested in.
Sure. Yeah, that should. I mean, we missed our post draft show last week, and we finally were able to do it this week. Obviously, we're missing Connor, and I still want to hear his thoughts on the Pickens trade when he comes back next week. But I mean, he did have a Connor's take last night, so I mean, we did kind of
Yeah.
get to hear what his thoughts were. Um, Next week, I think next actual Wednesday is when the schedule comes out. So maybe next week we do another mock schedule because I think
Yeah.
we have done it in the past. So
Yeah, we done in the last few years. Yeah, mock
so,
schedules.
so just something for fun, something different. But yeah, I mean let's do a mock schedule next week. Get Connor's actual reaction to the Pickens trade. And I believe kind of a shorter show tonight, but that should wrap everything up for tonight. Thank
Mhm.
you again for tuning in to our audience, and go Bills.
Go
Like,
Bills.
comment, and subscribe. Go
Yes,
Bills.
go Bills.